What's up guys, it's Tearless. Welcome back to Arcarus for the second video in the two video series looking at Unholy Death Knights. In the first video we looked at the abilities and the artifact weapon for an Unholy Death Knight. In this video we will be looking at the PvE and PvP talents. As you noticed in the first video, a lot of things have changed for Unholy Death Knights. While the theme of pets and diseases is still there, they really have gotten an overhaul to their play style, their rotation, everything, and there's a lot of fun changes coming for Unholy Death Knights in World of Warcraft Legion. I will tell you that this is the first time that I've ever looked at a talent tree, PvE specifically speaking, because PvE is the only thing returning. PvP is brand new. The first time I've ever looked at a talent tree, and there is almost, I believe, not a single talent that is the same. There is, I believe, only one. Only one talent in the entire talent tree has been retained from the old Unholy talent tree. Otherwise, everything else is brand new. So there's going to be a lot to go through in this PvE talent tree. I do not inspect every single talent on live with every single talent on the beta realms. I instead look for, similar talents and determine whether they've changed at all. So it's possible that some of the talents that are on live may have come inserted their way into this new talent tree under a completely new name and icon, and I will miss it. Otherwise, for the most part, this looks all completely brand new from anything I've seen before, and most of that's because of the fact that they've made a lot of changes into how they approach talent trees, and also because they've completely butchered Unholy's, rotation style, their play style. They still have same themes, but their play style has changed. So with that, let's go ahead and look at the PvE talent tree. So, in the 56 tier, first we have All Will Serve. Your Raise Dead spell summons an additional skeletal minion and its cooldown is removed. So let's go ahead and just pop this up right here. And let me put Raise Dead on my bar. So Raise Dead now has an instant cast, and I can pop it up, and as you can see, I now have a little corpse Ryzen Stalker on the left, and on the right I have my normal minion. And I'm not quite sure if that will stay. I believe they do. So you now have basically two pets at your command now. And as you can see, the Ryzen Skulker, excuse me, I was calling it a Stalker, sits there and he fires arrows at the target. So that's pretty cool. Now I'm going to back up here, return my minions. I'm going to have to put them on passive. They stop attacking when I don't want them to. So that's pretty cool. It's basically you have dual pets now as a Unholy Death Knights. Your second option here is Festering Wounds, Bursting Spores, sorry. Festering Wounds deal 50% more damage when burst, and all enemies within 8 yards of the burst, 8 yards of a burst Festering Wound suffer 1800 shadow damage. So this is just ridiculous. This is absurd AoE damage, is basically what it is. So, in case you've forgotten, Festering Wound is the new disease type ability that actually goes on, with Festering Strike, and then you use Scourge Strike to kind of pop it. So, as you can see right here, now when I'm popping them is doing AoE damage. And it's kind of absurd how much damage you can do. So if I were to, just to give you an idea, I'm going to stack this back up to 8, and my runes really need to be off cooldown before I can display this to you. And put 4 on that one, and then if I can get 4 on this one as well. And then we're going to put before this all goes down, we're going to put down this, and then we're going to use one Scourge Strike, and it should hit all of them, and it's going to burst all over the place. If you remember, Scourge Strike under a Death and Decay will hit multiple targets, so that means you're bursting all of them on different targets. So we're talking about a massive amount of AoE you can get out of something like Bursting Spores. The third option here is Ebon Fever, and this is dealing with the other option you have, which is Virulent Plague. Virulent Plague deals the same damage in half the time. So normally, Virulent Plague, it takes 21 seconds. And with Ebon Fever, it is cut down to 10.5 seconds. I'm really irritated now that I just noticed this. Every time I go through an abilities overview, I make sure to set my talents into something that will not change the abilities on my bar, and I missed Even Fever. So, baseline, it's 21 seconds for Virulent Plague, but if you wanted to deal damage faster, you can get Even Fever so that it deals damage in half the time. I'm not sure in terms of PvE whether this will be better or worse. My guess is that this is going to be more of a PvP thing, but then maybe bursting spores will give you more burst in PvP. I'm not quite sure. Or maybe all of a sudden, you've really got three great options here for you to choose from. The theory crafters will decide which one's best for the PvE, and then hopefully it'll be close enough so that if you really just want to have a different playstyle, you can choose that as well. So with that, I'm going to switch to bursting spores so we can see just how much AoE fun we can really have here. We have a blighted rune weapon. Your next 4 auto attacks infect your target with 2 festering wounds. A 1-minute cooldown. I will show this at the end of this tier because it's a 1-minute cooldown. I don't want to wait for it. So we'll move to pestilent pustules. Every 4 festering wounds you burst, you gain 1 rune. So this is a little bit of a return on your runes right there. And then the third one here is called Epidemic. Causes each of your virulent plagues within 100 yards to flare up, dealing 48,000 shadow damage to the infected enemy, and an additional 8,000 or 9,000 shadow damage, I guess you could say, rounded, damage to all other enemies near him. Now we're just getting into absolutely epidemic proportions of AoE damage here. Sorry, I had to do that. I'm going to put Plague here, Plague there, Plague here, and Plague here. So now we have Plague in all 3 corners attacking, and then we're just going to go ahead and use Epidemic here, and you can see the damage numbers just shooting through the roof all across the place. And it's because we just have so much virulent plague going off, and then Epidemic on top of it is able to deal even more damage. Epidemic with bursting spores, it just makes Unholy Death Knights the absolute king of AoE. I mean, I know Necrotic Plague used to be just the king of AoE. That is no longer in, I believe, any talent tree. I'm not quite sure about Blood. I haven't gotten to Blood yet, but for the most part, I believe it's gone. And really, that has been replaced with Epidemic. Epidemic is absolutely absurd in how much it can actually produce in terms of AoE. And this will easily be the AoE option in PvE. PvP, it may also be the option because you're going to be able to get your plague on a lot of people and just put a lot of spread pressure on like a rated battleground team. This is something you probably won't see in arenas, but definitely it's something you could see in rated battlegrounds and in your normal BGs and in large-scale world PvP. The other options are going to be more of the single target options. Let's go ahead and take a look at Blighted Rune Weapon now. We'll go ahead and activate it. I thought I had it down on my bars. I guess I don't, so I'll put it over here. And we'll go ahead and activate it here. Nice little activation. And there you go. And I have 3 charges of this. I can switch targets and hit them with auto attacks. As you can see, it puts a few on and so forth. And then of course I can use the D&D. And then with the Scourge Strike, just massive AoE once again. Lots of AoE options. Unholy is absurd. It's going to be way too much fun to do a lot of AoE as Unholy in World of Warcraft Legion, so that's going to be a lot of fun. So, with that, let's go ahead and I'm going to switch to, when it comes off cooldown, I'm going to switch back to Epidemic and keep this AoE theme going. On the 58 tier, we have Unholy Frenzy. When Festering Wounds bursts, you gain 100% increased attack speed for 2 seconds. So this is going to be pretty awesome, especially when you can control it through Scourge Strike. Getting that increased attack speed for 100%, that's going to be a really nice item in PvE. It could be just as powerful in PvP, so I really do like that there. There is Castigator. Each Festering Strike critical strike applies 2 additional Festering Wounds. Each Scourge Strike critical strike bursts 1 additional Festering Wound. So this is really, I mean, this is going into the AoE theme here, especially with what I've done. All runes are up, so I'm going to do it again over here. I'm going to put Festering Wounds on all these targets. We got 3 on one, 4 on another, 3 on another, and then we will put a Death and Decay down, and we're going to see just how much damage we can do with Scourge Strike. Hopefully we can get a crit. That's what I was looking for, and all of that damage just came up at once. So that's something that's going to be more towards the bursty side, and I would say more towards PvP, but I wouldn't count it out of PvE if the Theory Crafters deem it be the option of choice in terms of dealing maximum damage possible. Your other option here is called Clawing Shadows, which is actually going to replace your Scourge Strike, deals 64,000 shadow damage, and causes 1 festering wound to burst. Just to give you an idea of how different that is, an Unholy Strike that deals 30,000 physical damage and 23,000 shadow damage and causes 1 festering wound to burst. So it just basically converts everything into shadow damage, but the one thing, in case you haven't seen it yet, is actually this. It's this fact that I can go all the way back here, and I can still use it. It's a 30-yard range. Unholy has an absurd range. I mean, Outbreak from 30 yards, you know, Scourge, the Clawing Shadows from 30 yards. It's just, it starts to get a little ridiculous. AoE, range damage, your pets can get up in there and deal damage. This is a very interesting kind of quasi slash half ranged, half melee. I mean, I guess you could say Frost has always been a little bit like that. You've always been able to do some nice range damage with Howling Blast, but of course you will never get your full main damage without being up close. That looks like that's starting to be the same with Unholy as well, which is pretty cool. So that is Clawing Shadows. Our next option in the 60 tier, we have Asphyxiate. I hope I pronounced that right. This is returning. I believe this was Blood Death Knights only. I cannot quite remember. Now it is baseline. I guess you could say they've almost swapped Asphyxiate and Strangulate. So this is now in the talent tree. This used to be in the talent tree, so you used to be able to get in the talent tree. It was a 30-second cooldown then. Now it is a 45-second cooldown. So it's been increased by 15 seconds. But you still have this option here if you would like to take it. Your other option is Debilitating Infestation. Outbreak reduces the movement speed of all affected enemies by 50% for 3 seconds. So this is like Chillblains, especially how it works. I mean, Chillblains, basically, the thing was that you always, when you used Howling Blast, you were infecting so many people with Frost Fever, and so it worked so well. Well, this is kind of the same thing. Your other option here is called Sludge Belcher. Raise Dead now summons an abomination instead of a ghoul with improved innate abilities. So if you really do like the pet, I can raise an abomination here, and I have a mini abomination on my side. I don't know if it's the best option. He does have this hook, hurl a hook, pulling the target. If the target is immune, the abomination is instead pulled to the target. So you have another death grip, basically, with this abomination, which is going to make it really powerful in PvP. As long as you know where your pet is, it's going to make it really powerful in PvP to have this at your disposal. However, Debilitating Infestation can be good in more of a mass world PvP or in a rated battleground setting. And then Asphyxiate kind of fits all areas. This is definitely more of a PvP tier, so I can see it being irritating to PvEers to see a mostly PvP tier in the PvE tree, especially since Sludge Belcher, I think, is pretty much going to be your only option. It's really the only way for you to really, I mean, you're going to get extra damage out of it, and it's the only way you're going to actually improve your damage. So this is going to be pretty much 100% the option that you take in PvE without question, whereas the PvPers have a little bit more of a choice. So with that, let's go ahead and go to the 75 tier. We have Spell Eater. Your anti-magic shell is 20% larger and lasts 5 seconds longer. Really don't know what this looks like. It says 20% larger. I believe that's in how much it can absorb. I keep thinking spell visual is going to be larger, but it's just, it should say your anti-magic shell can absorb 20% more instead of 20% larger. It really is kind of confusing there. Your next option, well, let's look at this last one on the end here, because the middle is a cooldown. Lingering Apparition, you move 30% faster during Wraith Walk, and its cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. So it's now 45 seconds, and you move at 100% increased speed, as opposed to the 70% increased speed. The last option is going to be Corpse Shield for the next 10 seconds. 90% of all damage you take is transferred to your ghoul. If your ghoul is slain while a spell is active, it cannot be resummoned for 30 seconds. So just take note of that. Raise Dead, and I'll use Corpse Shield just so we can see the animation. There you go, right there. And so all damage will be redirected to my ghoul. Does that happen with tanks as well? Can I kill off? I think I killed off my pet. Did I? No. Okay. Things normally don't work very well with the tank dummy, so I'm just going to ignore the tank dummy. I didn't take any damage though, so things are weird with the tank dummy. In the next tier, we have Shadow Infusion. While your ghoul is not transformed, Death Coil will also reduce the remaining cooldown on Dark Transformation by 5 seconds. This is awesome. So, I mean, as you remember, Dark Transformation is now a 1-minute cooldown. You can run down here, start dealing damage, and so forth. And then your Death Coil is going to reduce it by 5 seconds every single time. You can see the Portrait of Dark Transformation. It's right underneath Gnaw from my pet ability bar. You'll see it jump down every single time from Shadowy Infusion, so that's pretty cool. The second option here is going to be Necrosis. Dealing damage with Death Coil causes your next Scourge Strike to deal 25% increased damage. So kind of just a passive thing there. And then lastly we have Infected Claws. Your ghoul's claw attack has a 35% chance to cause a festering wound on the target. So this is what I've had on the entire time, and when I was doing the abilities video, there were many times in which Festering Wound was just appearing without me actually using Festering Strike. And it comes from my ghoul right here. So realistically, I see this being a really popular choice right here. Just because it gives you more options to explode more of these Festering Wounds, and since it lasts so long and you can only stack up to A, it allows you to focus more on Scourge Strikes as opposed to Festering Strikes in terms of bursting the damage off of it. Because a Festering Strike is 113,000 damage, and then Festering Wound is on the target. But then Scourge Strike is going to be less damage. It's only going to be 50,000 damage, but it's going to burst the Festering Wound, which will deal 24,000 damage on top of that. So you're trading out, looks like per rune, it looks like you're trading out around 65,000 damage, and instead, or 60,000 damage around that. Sorry, 113. Sorry. 55,000 damage. I knew we'd get around 55 to 58,000 damage. You're trading out that per rune, damage per rune, and instead you're trading it for what it looks like is going to be about 24,000, 25. It's going to be about 80,000 per rune. So it's going to be a DPS increase with kind of focusing on if you're able to focus more on Scourge Strike for your runes as opposed to Festering Strike. So this should be an option that is popular or a good chance to be taken. It depends on the theory crafters on which one is going to be the best here. I personally, I wouldn't know. To be honest, this is a lame tier for me and not one of my favorite tiers. So it is an option for any one of them. In the level 100 tier, we have Defile. This is the only one coming back besides Asphyxiate. So this one's coming back. However, there's a cool new change in it, which increases your mastery by 150, stacking up to 10 times. So, I mean, let's just go ahead and see here how much my mastery stacks. Let me go ahead and pull up my bar here so we can take a look at my mastery as I do this. Hopefully it will show it in real time. I'm going to sit here, and the stacks are going to start going up. My mastery is now increased by 750, and my mastery is going up all the time. It's increasing damage by about 1% per tick, and it'll cap out at the max tick of 10 there. So it basically is going to equate to 1% per tick in terms of your mastery going up, which is going to in turn 1% increase shadow damage per tick as long as you're in Defile's range. Next option here is Soul Reaper. So I did mention in the abilities video that Soul Reaper would come back as an ability. However, considering all the things that have changed, it's slightly different. It functions somewhat similar, but it is slightly different. Strike an enemy for 137,000 shadow damage, afflicting them with Soul Reaper for 5 seconds. Bursting a festering wound on an enemy afflicted by Soul Reaper grants 7% haste for 15 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So I'm going to go ahead and use Festering Wound right here. And hopefully get 4 stacks. I did. And then we're going to use Soul Strike right there. And then we're going to start bursting them right here. And we got at least 2 stacks there, I believe. Or we got 1 stack. So I wasn't quite quick enough. I needed to be a little bit quicker on actually bursting those stacks. I delayed too much in using Scourge Strike there, so that's my bad. But you can stack up to 3 times, so around 21% haste, as long as you get it off within those 5 seconds. So you have to really move quickly on that, and that could give you a big damage buff. We'll see how that works out in PvE. I would think that would be one of the top choices for PvE. The other option here is Dark Arbiter. So you can summon a Valkyr to attack the target for 15 seconds. I thought the Valkyr was supposed to be like really rare. I mean, Sylvanas is looking all over for him. But I guess not, because I can just summon him whenever. Summon a Valkyr to attack the target for 15 seconds. The Valkyr will, gain 1% increased damage for every 1 runic power you spend. So let's go ahead and check this out, see what it looks like. I have no clue where that icon went on my bars, so I'm just going to put another one down here. And, oh, I see it now. And we're going to go ahead and summon it. And there it is right there. She's wielding one of the best pole arms ever in the game. That is Black Eyes. It's my absolute favorite pole arm in the game. So she'll sit there and she'll continue to grant that buff. 1% increased damage for every 1 runic power you spend. That will be from usually the death coil. So I mean the first, if you use 1 runic power, you're going to get, she's going to get 35% increased damage right off the bat. So that's pretty cool. It does not say how long, or it lasts for 15 seconds. So you want to burst up, you want to make sure that you have a lot of runic power saved up before you pop having Dark Arbiter up, because then you're going to blow all the death coils as quickly as you can, and then she will have tons of damage to deal with in there. So it's an interesting choice between this tier. Which one is going to be the most popular? I don't know. Defile could be really popular as long as the boss is not as long as the boss isn't too mobile. Otherwise, the PvEers will have to decide which one is the top for DPS inside a raid. With that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the honor talents. I really am liking the PvE talents, and with stuff like Epidemic and Bursting and Debilitating Infestation, there's a lot of damage you can do in this tree, which makes a lot of fun. A lot of fun with the AoE damage. I always like AoE damage, it's a lot of fun. So, let's look at the honor talents. Honor is going to work differently in World of Warcraft Legion. You're going to start at level 1, and you're going to work your way all the way up to level 50. At level 1, you will get Gladiator's Medallion. By level 10, you have Unholy Mutation. By 13, you will get Adaptation. You'll work your way down to Reanimation, and then the last tier will be done the same. Finally, ending with Necrotic Strike at level 46. Yes, hype. We will get to Necrotic Strike at the very end of this video. And then at level 50, you have the option of Prestige. I believe the first Prestige level you get like a pet. And then like different Prestige levels you get cosmetic items or maybe a mount. There is a mount, I think, at like level 4 or whatever. So there's options out there for you to get by prestiging, but remember, each time you prestige, you lose all your talents and start back at level 1. So you'll have to take caution on whether or not you want to actually start back at 1, or you really don't care and you're cool with just having all your talents at level 50 and just leaving it there. So it's going to be up to you. So with that being said, let's go ahead and look at the first talent tier, which is all about the Honorable Medallion. The Honorable Medallion is the first medallion you get when you first enter a battleground. It is like a 3-minute trinket. It is like the heirloom trinket. You can get Gladiator's Medallion, which replaces your Honorable Medallion, but brings it down to the normal 2-minute trinket that everyone knows. So that's pretty cool. The second option here is Adaptation. All loss of control effects with a duration of 5 seconds or more will activate your Honorable Medallion spell, but only causes it to incur a 30-second cooldown. I actually really like this option for an Unholy DK. I like it for most DPSs out there. And so you have a 60-second cooldown, but you don't have control over it. I know some people would rather have control over it. You do have the option to use the Honorable Medallion because your Honorable Medallion is not replaced. However, it causes Adaptation to go on a 3-minute cooldown, so take note of that. The last option here is going to be Relentless. It replaces your Honorable Medallion, but the duration of incoming crowd control effects is reduced by 25%. Honestly, this is something, unless you're Resto Druid or a tank, I just don't see many people because you need to be able to tank that damage. You're not going to be able to get out of any type of snare or trinket or whatnot. So be careful about that. With that being said, the second tier is all about melee DPS. You have Hardiness, which is well above 80% health. You take 20% less damage. Reinforced Armor, health is increased by 10%. Or Sparring. Physical melee attacks have a 20% chance to be blunted, dealing 50% reduced damage. 3 defensive options right there for you. The next 2 tiers are all dealing about DKs, Death Knights. You have Cadaverous Pallor. If I pronounced that right, you have a 20% chance when struck by a magical spell for it to be completely absorbed and converted into a disease on yourself, dealing nature damage over time. So this is kind of mitigating damage slowly. You have Anti-Magic Zone, which is taken from the old talent tree. It's now in the PvP talent tree. Places an Anti-Magic Zone for 10 seconds that reduces spell damage taken by party raid members for 60 seconds. Comparatively, the old one was 20, however it only reduces by 20%. This one will reduce by 60%, so it's really a big deal. And then you have Dark Simulacrum. I mentioned that this was coming back in the last video. Places a Dark Ward on the enemy that persists for 12 seconds, triggering then the enemy next spends mana on a spell, and allowing the Death Knight to unleash the exact duplicate of that spell. So that's actually, it's always been a fun ability to have, and personally I would probably take this just because it's fun to have this ability. Costs 20 runic power. It's a 30-second cooldown. I believe that is greatly reduced from what it was on live. I want to say on live, at the very least, it was 1 minute, if not more, 2 minutes maybe. Now on a 30-second cooldown, it's a lot of fun. So that's pretty cool. Here we have an Aura tier, which is kind of cool. We have Decomposing Aura. All enemies within 10 yards slowly decay, losing 3% of their max health every 2 seconds. Stacks up to 5 times. Lasts for 5 seconds. Do note that 10 yards is pretty close, so you have to be pretty close for them to be losing 15% of their health every 2 seconds. I don't know if this will go live. I could be reading this wrong. Okay, I could be, it says stacks up to 5 times. I could be completely reading this wrong. It could be that it stacks up in length up to 5 times. So as long as you're staying close enough to them, it could stack up to 25 seconds, and then it'll refresh at 25 seconds until it's gone. That makes more sense. But if it's 15%, that's just overpowered and it's going to get nerfed immediately. But I'm guessing that it is the first one that I suggested, that it will stack up in time, and then that means that when you go out of range for 10 seconds, when you're out of range for 5 seconds, that it'll just, when you go out of range, however many stacks you have up there will last as long as that is, so it could be up to 25 seconds. There's Heartstop Aura, decreases cooldown recovery rate of abilities by 30% to all enemies within 10 yards. That's really powerful. It's, any ability-based type class, this is what you're gonna want. First thing that comes to mind is probably like Ret Paladins. Heartstop Aura is gonna be really annoying for something like a Ret Paladin. It's gonna be really annoying for any warrior spec. Really annoying for any warrior spec. Rogues, it won't have the same effect on someone like a rogue, okay? Those are more based on their energy and whatnot. That's what they're limited by. but the classes that are limited by cooldowns more, this is going to really, really mess with them, and it's going to be really powerful. And remember, before a rated battleground or whatever starts, you can actually like see the other team and be like, change your talents. So you can be like, okay, they've got a warrior as their melee DPS, and then of course their let's say their ranged DPS didn't have a hunter on it, like they had nothing but mages and whatnot. You'd be like, all right, this is the one I want. You go with a Heartstop Aura. Necrotic Aura, all enemies within 10 yards take 8% increased magical damage. You're dealing a lot of Shadow and Shadow Frost damage as an Unholy DK, so this is nothing to snooze at. I mean, your Plagues are going to be big damage, so you're going to have Shadow damage out of Virulent Plague, Shadow damage out of Festering Wound, so that's something to look at. These last two tiers are going to be more specific to Unholy DKs. We have Crypt Fever. Whenever enemies are healed while afflicted by your Festering Wound, they take 32,000 shadow damage. So you got like insurance on people trying to get healed under your Festering Wound. Remember, Festering Wound's kind of difficult to spread, okay? It's not as easy to spread as Virulent Plague. Virulent Plague, you put it on Outbreak and it erupts each time and so forth. That's going to be not as strong. That's not going to be as easy as spreading Festering Wounds, which basically is going to be through your Festering Strike and other abilities. I don't think there are too many other abilities to be able to actually apply that. You basically have to deal with Festering Strike and your actual little minion to spread that plague. So be on note when thinking of Crypt Fever on that. There's Pandemic. When you use Outbreak, all your enemies within 40 yards afflicted by your diseases take 54,000 shadow damage, and the duration of your diseases on them are refreshed. So as long as you just continue to use Outbreak on a consistent basis, and you're just going to continue to do absurd amounts of damage, AoE damage in PvP. It's really not even fair. I think it's crazy. The last option here is going to be Wandering Plague. Causes 51,000 shadow damage over 8 seconds and inflicts Virulent Plague on the target. When Wandering Plague's duration ends or is dispelled, it jumps to a nearby enemy within 30 yards afflicted by one of your diseases. Lasts for 3 jumps. You can only have one Wandering Plague active at one time. I don't really like this one. It's too easy to spread Virulent Plague. When you hit Virulent Plague, okay, it causes all nearby targets to also be infected with Virulent Plague. So as you've seen here, every time I put it on this target, it hits both targets with it. So both targets are hit with Virulent Plague. And it's just, like, with both of those targets being infected with Virulent Plague, it's too easy to spread it. And this is going to be your main way of spreading diseases. Festering Wound does not spread too easily. It really doesn't. So Wandering Plague, to be honest, it applies Virulent Plague, which in my opinion is not that great. If it applied Festering Wound, I would consider this better. But for the moment, I just don't think it's that strong. I think something like Pandemic and Crypt Fever would be better, or you would get more use out of it. The last tier, we have Unholy Mutation. When your Virulent Plague is dispelled or ends its duration, a slime spawns, dealing 1,800 plague damage and slowing all enemies within 8 yards for 15% for 3 seconds. This is awesome. I mean, if you're able to knock off a lot of plagues, you're able to have slimes all over the place. I mean, that's awesome. That's really cool. There's Reanimation. 2 runes. Reanimates a nearby corpse, summoning a zombie with 5 health for 20 seconds to slowly move towards your target. If it reaches your target, it explodes, stunning all enemies within 5 yards for 3 seconds and dealing 10% of the enemy's health and shadow damage. So this is pretty cool. The only problem is that the damage is so low, and I don't know if it's affected by AoE damage. I feel like it's just going to... It's not really going to do too much. And when I think of it says slowly move toward your target, as that DK right next to me just did. I'm going to try and show right here. You have that artifact talent right there. That's how slow I expect it to move. So I expect it to move really slow, and for people to find it really quickly and just knock it out of the sky before it does any damage to you. So I don't know how strong this will be. It's really powerful option if someone's able to get it to you. And it's only 5 seconds, so you're able to summon these every 5 seconds, and it could be really powerful. I would like it better if you actually had more control over which corpse you were rezzing. Like, if you were able to res a corpse behind the enemy, and then have them, it come near them. It could be interesting. On a 1v1 situation, maybe, on a battleground, it could be really OP, because you could notice a corpse and reanimate them, and then keep, distracting them until they realize that they've been stunned, and now 10% of their health is gone. Otherwise, I like Unholy Mutation better. And then there's this option, of course. There's Necrotic Strike, a vicious strike that deals 36,000 plague damage and converts one festering wound into a necrotic wound, absorbing the next 80,000 healing received by the target. So Necrotic Strike, little bit different, but essentially the same, is back. Just costs 1 rune. PvP people are going to be taking Necrotic Strike. Unless you're in a Mass World PvP type situation, I would probably take Unholy Mutation. Otherwise, I think Necrotic Strike is 100% going to be the #1 option taken by all Unholy Death Knights without question. I don't think there's really any questioning that. So, those are the PvP talents for an Unholy Death Knight. Overall, I think Unholy Death Knight is really fun and has reclaimed its crown as the top of DKs. If anything, it's gone to second place. It no longer is Frost top, I guess you could say. That's what I would say. Is no longer Frost is the top of DKs. Unholy, at the moment, I don't. Damage numbers are still coming in, and it's very possible that they could lose a lot of damage. But right now, Unholy Death Knights are absurd in PvP, and it's fun to have them back. They really just deal an absurd amount of damage, and for the first time, I think, in a very long time, if ever, it does more AoE damage than a Frost Death Knight. We're so used to going into a battleground and Frost Death Knights like Howling Blast, haha, and they top the damage in a random battleground. That's not going to be the case anymore, because Virulent Plague is like everything Frost Fever and Howling Blast could do, but just so much more, and so much more. It's easier to get off and to spread and so forth. So it's really cool. I really do like Unholy DKs. I really hope you guys like this video. I hope you guys like where Unholy DKs are going. The theme is still there, but they've really kind of zeroed in on the theme much more and made it much better. I personally think it's much better than borrowing Blood Plague from Blood and borrowing Frost Fever from Frost. It now has its own true diseases to deal with, which makes it more fun. So, that's everything for an Unholy DK. I hope to see you guys in the next video. Otherwise, teal us out.